Good morning. It is week 8, and I wanted to read to you Romeo and Juliet, Act 2, Scene 4. This is some of the scene with Benvolio and Mercutio, and then we'll see a little bit of Romeo and the nurse as well. Before we get started, though, I thought it might make things a little bit more interesting if I told a joke, because I know that you probably miss my jokes, right? I know I miss your jokes. So are you ready? Okay. So the question is, it's one of those joke questions. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Now don't Google it. Try to think. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Are you ready? Because he was outstanding in his field. Ba-bum-bum. I know, it was pretty funny, wasn't it? I cracked myself up. All right, so the code for today's video to show that you've been watching and participating is Scarecrow. So again, why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he is outstanding in his field. If you have a corny joke that you don't mind sharing with me, feel free. And of course, you can share my jokes. I'm sure that gave you a lot of laughter, right? All right, we'll get to our reading. Okay, so here we have just the backtrack. In the previous scene, Romeo met up with Friar Lawrence because him and Juliet declared their love, and they want to get married, and Friar Lawrence could be able to do that. Now, Friar Lawrence at first was kind of shocked because he knew that Romeo was kind of heartsick about Rosalind, and now he's asking him to marry Juliet. But Friar Lawrence, even though he thinks that Romeo's being a little hasty, is going to agree to do it because he thinks this would be a great end to the conflict between the families. This scene, we're going to see Benvolio Mercutio kind of wondering where Romeo was at because the party was just last night, right? He was heartsick over Rosalind, and as all they knew is that they were kind of going home together, and then Romeo kind of just snuck off, and we know that he was going to see Juliet, but they don't know what happened to him, so they're kind of concerned. So that's where we kind of open up this scene. So here's Mercutio, and when we read Mercutio's lines, please keep in mind that Mercutio is a little snarky. He's kind of witty. He has a sense of humor, a little on the darker side, so he jokes quite a bit. All right, so Mercutio, where the devil should this Romeo be? Came he not home tonight? Not to his father's. I spoke with his man. Why, that same pale, hard-hearted wench, that Rosalind, torments him so that he would sure run mad. So they're wondering what happened to Romeo. He did not come home, and Benvolio said that he didn't come home to his father's. So now Mercutio is kind of blaming Rosalind. He must be so tormented still and so heartbroken that he's still running mad. I mean, think about it kind of in our opening scenes. He was kind of up all night and upset. Then we find out something else going on. So Benvolio goes, Tybalt, the kinsman to old Capulet, has sent a letter to his father's house. A challenge on my life? Romeo will answer it. Any man that can write may answer a letter. Nay, he will answer the letter's master. How he dares being dared. So a letter from Tybalt, the cousin of the Capulet, is arrived at the Montague house, and it's challenging Romeo to a duel. Because if you remember, during the party, they found out, or Tybalt found out, that that was Romeo, and he was very upset that a Montague would show their face at the Capulet house. Now, Lord Capulet said, just leave it alone. He's conducting himself fine. I don't want to cause a scene. But Tybalt wants his revenge. So now he is like challenging them in a letter for a duel or a fight. And kind of the boys now are talking about what exactly they're going to do with that. Alas, poor Romeo, he's already dead. Stabbed with a white wench's black eye, run through the ear with a love song, the very pin of his heart cleft with the blind bow boy's butt shaft. And he's a man to encounter Tybalt? So here he's making a joke saying that Romeo is not in any shape to fight. He's kind of stabbed, and when we're saying the white wench black eye, he's like lovesick or stabbed because of Rosalind by Cupid's bow. So again, like Cupid is like responsible, right, for like shooting love's arrows. So they're basically saying he's in no sort of shape to fight Tybalt because he's already just like heartbroken and upset. And so Benvolio is going to talk about, well, really, what kind of man is Tybalt to fight? Is he really worth it? Is he really a challenge? So Benvolio goes, why? What is Tybalt? And so Mercutio is going to kind of respond about what type of person Tybalt is. More than a prince of cats. Oh, he's the courageous captain of compliments. Sorry, let me backtrack here. More than the Prince of Cats. Oh, he's the courageous captain of compliments. He fights as you sing prig song, keeps time, distance, and proportion. He rests on minimum rest, 1, 2, and the third in your bosom. The very butcher of a silk button, a duelist, a gentleman of the very first house, of the first and second cause. Oh, the immortal passado, the punto reverso, the hay. So he's basically saying that when we're talking about Tybalt's fighting skills, he is somebody that is very skilled at like fencing and fighting. He has it down to like a science. So he has a certain kind of stance and way that he fights. It's not like barbaric. It's very precise. And there's definitely methods to it and a flow. And then he starts kind of bringing up all these different like terms or ways that he fights. And so Benolio goes, the what? The pox of such antic, lisping, affecting fanaticos. These new tuners of accents. By Jesu, a very good babe, a very tall man, a very good whore. Why, is this not a lamentable thing, grand sir, that we should be thus afflicted with these strange flies, these fashion mongers, these pardonees who stand so much on the new form that they cannot sit at ease at the old bench? Oh, they're bones, they're bones. So he's basically saying, like when he says the antic, lisping, affecting, he's basically saying that Tybalt is kind of fake. And he's one of those kind of pretentious people that are putting on those fake accents and know all these strategies and whatnot of fighting and puts on all these like airs. So again, he's going to be somebody that like, is he really a challenge? But he is somebody that studies all these fencing terms here. So Benolio goes, well, here comes Romeo. Here comes Romeo. Without this roe like a dried herring. Oh, flesh, how are thou fishified? Now is he for the numbers. That patriarch flowed in, Laura to be his lady. Was a kitchen wench, Mary she'd a better love to be hime her. Dido a dowdy, Cleopatra a gypsy. Helen and hero hidings and harlots. This be ye, a grey eye or so. But to be the purpose, Signor Romeo, bonjour. That's a French salutation to your French slop. You gave us the counterfeit fairy last night. Okay, so a lot going on. So basically, he's first saying when he says that he looks like a dried herring, that he looks skinny, like a dried fish. So he's not looking, or like a dried bird. He's not looking the greatest. So all worn out. And then he is making all these allusions to different like women in history, like Helen of Troy. We know Cleopatra, and kind of still how he's kind of like heart-stricken. And he's then also saying like, you gave us the counterfeit fairly last night. Kind of asking like, hey, you snuck out on us and kind of, we didn't know where you were going. So Romeo says, good morrow to you both. What counterfeit did I give you? The slip, sir, the slip. Can you not conceive? Pardon, good Mercutio. My business is great. In such a case as mine, a man may strain courtesy. That's such a thing to say. Such a case as yours constrains a man to bow in the hands. Meaning to curtsy? That is most kindly hit it. A most courteous exposition. So basically, they're just kind of going back and forth. He says that he had business to attend to, and they're like, that's not very polite. But Mercutio is kind of like joking around and being sarcastic, like, oh, that's not polite of you. As they kind of joke here. And so then he's even saying, like, when he says a bow of hands, like curtsying and like showing respect, like you need to be very polite. So Mercutio says, nay, I'm the very pink of courtesy. Pink for flower, right? Well then, is my pump well flowered? Sure, wit follow me this just now, till thou hast worn out thy pump that, with a single sole of it is worn, that just may remain, after the wearing solely singular. So he's saying, okay, this is just like a bad joke, so are we done now? Oh, solely sold jest, solely singular for the singleness. Come between us, good Benolio. My wits faints. Wits and spurs, I'll cry a match. Nay, if our wits run the wild goose chase, I'm done, for thou is more of the wild goose than one of the wits, then I'm sure. I have them my whole 5. Was I with you there for the goose? Thou was never with me for anything, when thou that was not there for thy goose. I'll bite thee by that ear for that jest. Nay, good bite, by not. That wit is a very bitter sweeting, and is a most sharp sauce. So they're kind of going back and forth, implying kind of about their joking. Romeo is kind of implying in this line here, thou was never with me for anything when thou was not there for the goose. Like, you're always just joking with me. Are you really there for me? And so he said, I'll bite thee by the ear for that jest. And so that actually makes Mercutio a little upset, because he's saying, hey, no, like, that makes me a little upset. I am still here for you. So again, we kind of see the kind of relationship that the boys have with each other. Okay, sorry, let me backtrack. So again, so he's saying, I will bite thee by that ear for that jest. So he's saying, no, like, I do care about you. Like, don't joke about us just being buddies that joke. And he says, nay, good goose, bite not. So he's like, no, don't get upset. So he says that wit is very bitter sweeting. It is a most sharp sauce. So they're still going back and forth about how they kind of joke and can get kind of saucy with each other. And he said, "Is not then well served to a sweet goose?" And he's like, "Well, you don't ask for it when you joke to me." And he says, "Oh, here's a wit of Chevrel that stretches from an inch narrow to an ell broad." I stretch it to the word broad, which added to the goose proves thee far and wide a broad goose. Why is now that better than groaning for love? Now art thou sociable. Now art thou Romeo. Now art thou what thou art, by art as well as by nature. For this driveling love is like a great natural that runs, lolling up and down to hide his bauble in a hole. So he's saying, oh, you aren't groaning as much. You're sociable. You're like yourself, like Romeo. So now why are you like how you're being right now as art as well as nature? Because now think about it. Romeo's joking back with him. He's not as like heartbroken. So he's saying, hey, like what's going on? And Benilde goes, stop there, stop there. Thou hast desired me to stop and my tail against the hair. So he's saying, you want me to stop as I'm going to like talk and tell a story? Thou would as else made thy tail large. So he's saying, if I didn't stop you, you would just keep talking. Oh, thou art deceived. I would have made it short, for I come by the whole depth of my tale, and meant indeed to occupy the argument no longer. So he's trying to like, and again, they're joking back and forth, saying like, oh no, I never talk too long. I make it short. What are you saying? And as they're doing this, he says, here's a goodly gear. And so then we have the nurse, that is Juliet's nurse, and a man named Peter coming up. And so they say, a sail, a sail. So this is something good. Like, who's coming here? Two tails, a shirt, and a smock. So Mercutio is, again, I tell you, he jokes. So he's basically saying Juliet's nurse is looks like she's a man and a female and must be kind of large. It looks like a man and a woman all together in a shirt and a dress. So basically, he's not saying that she's maybe the prettiest, trying to make a joke. And so the nurse goes, Peter, anon, my fan, Peter. Good, Peter, to hide her face, for her fan's the fairer face. So, like, they have a fan, like, think of it like one that you'd use kind of to, like, fan yourself if it's warm. And so she's asking Peter for it. And so Mercutio is making another joke saying that her face is so ugly that she should have a fan in front of it. So, yeah, Mercutio is not always the sweetest guy. So we'll see how the nurse responds. Good ye, good morrow, gentlemen. Good ye, good day, fair gentlewoman. Is it good den? So they're saying, is it morning or is it afternoon? 'Tis no less, I tell you, for the body hand of the dial is now upon the prick of noon. Out upon you, what a man are you? So Mercutio is kind of giving her a hard time and kind of making fun of her, and so she's like telling him to leave. One gentlewoman, so let's see how kind of Romeo responds. One gentlewoman that God had made himself to mar. By my troth, it is well said, for himself to mar. Quoth the gentleman, can any of you tell me where I find myself, the young Romeo? So Romeo is being a lot more polite to her. He said, I'm trying to kind of ask what's going on. So he's saying, I'm a man, my lady. You know, I'm here to help you. I can tell, and she's wondering where Romeo is at. And she says, I can tell you, but young Romeo will be older when you found him, that he is when you sought him. I'm the youngest of that name, for faults of a worse. So he's saying that he is Romeo. You say well, and she's saying, well, you speak well with your words. And think about it, during the time of Shakespeare, being well spoken and being able to kind of communicate eloquently was a big deal. So when he kind of responds, and he's definitely more polite than Mercutio, that kind of shows us what type of person he is. He says, yes, is the worst well? Very well took, I faith, wisely, lively. And he says, oh, is the worst well? Is he really that great at talking? And she says, if be he, sir, I desire some confidence with you. So now she's just trying to get Mercutio to go away. So she's saying, I desire to kind of speak with you in private. Benilde goes, she'll indict him to some supper. So saying like, oh, is she trying to get him to go out to dinner with her? And like they're kind of making fun of her. And Mercutio goes, abad, abad, abad. So ho. So again, they're still making fun of her quite a bit. Romeo goes, "What hast thou found?" So he wants to know what's going on. "No hare, sir, unless a hare, sir, in Lenten pie. That is something stale and horror to be sent." He walks by them and sings, "An old hare whore, an old hare whore, is very good meat in Lent. But a hare that is whore is too much for score, when its horrors is to be spent. Romeo, will you come to your father's? Will to dinner thither?" So I'm not going to decode all of this because Mercutio is being quite nasty and is basically making fun of her for being older and then calling her essentially a prostitute. Yes, I know, but that's essentially what he's singing. That's Mercutio for you. Okay, so we'll see how Romeo is trying to talk to her in private about what's going on. So he says, "I will follow you." And so he goes, "Farewell, ancient lady, farewell, lady, lady, lady." So, of course, Mercutio has our last word here and is making fun of the nurse. So, as Mercutio and Benvolio leave, we'll have Nurse and Romeo kind of talking in private. "I pray you, sir, what saucy merchant was this that was so full of his ropery?" So she's saying, like, who was this foul-mouthed punk that was talking to me like this? And Romeo goes, "A gentleman, nurse, that loves to hear himself talk, and will speak more in a minute than he will stand to in a month." So he's saying, like, don't mind him. He's just somebody that just talks too much and doesn't very much, like, listen. So he's trying to kind of say, like, don't, please don't be offended. That's just Mercutio. It's not you. And so the nurse goes, "And speak anything against me, I'll take him down, and I were lustier than he is, and 20 such jacks, and if I cannot, I will find those that shall. Scurvy knave, I'm one of those flirt gills, I am none of his skeins mates, and thou must stand by two, and suffer every cave to use me as his pleasure." So she's very upset, and she basically is saying, like, if he attacks me or says anything against me, if I can't beat him up, I will find someone who will. And is kind of upset that Peter did not, the servant that she brought with her, did not stand up for her. And so Peter says, "I saw no man use you at his pleasure. If I had, my weapon should be quickly have been out, I warrant you. I dare draw as soon as another man if I see an occasion and a good quarrel, and the law on my side." So he said, nobody was attacking you. If something were to happen and I had to defend you in self-defense, of course, but that wasn't the case. They were just talking. So then the nurse says, "Now, afore God, I'm so vexed that every part of me quivers." So she's just so upset. "Scurvy knave, pray you, sir, a word, and as I told you, my young lady bid me inquire you out, and she bid me to say I'll keep it to myself. For first, let me tell you, if you should lead her into a fool's paradise, as they say, if you're a gross kind of behavior, as they say, for the gentlewoman is young, and therefore, if you should deal double with her, truly it will be an ill thing to be offered to any gentlewoman, and very weak dealing." So she says, I was upset, but I do have to talk to you. I was sent to say something to you. My young lady, Juliet, has inquired me to find out what's going on. She says, though, she gives a threat, and she kind of threatens Romeo. Because think about it. The nurse has taken care of her since she was a baby. So she does have some, like, maternal care over her. She says, "Let me tell you, you should not be leading her into a fool's paradise." So whatever you're saying to her, don't just like say, "Oh, I'm going to marry her," and then not follow through. So make sure that you are being honest and upfront with what you're doing. And then she also says, you should deal double with her, basically saying, "Do not cheat on her." So kind of, again, like threatening her. Please make sure that you are being kind and truthful and honest to Juliet. So the Romeo goes, "Nurse, commend me to thy lady and mistress. I protest unto thee." So he is saying that he would not, give kind regards to your lady and mistress. I think highly of her. So the nurse says, "Good heart, and I faith I will tell her as much. Lord, Lord, she'll be a joyful woman." So she's like, "Oh, good. So your intentions are pure. She'll be happy to hear." "What wilt thou tell her, nurse? Thou does not mark me." So he's saying, "Well, what are you going to tell her? What do you think of me?" And she says, "I will tell her, sir, that you do protest, which that I take as a gentleman offer." So she is saying that he does want to be with her. And so he says, bid her devise some means to come to a shrift this afternoon, and there she shall marry at Friar Lawrence's cell. Be chivaled and marry. Here is for thy pains." So she is saying, hold on here. So she's saying that, so this is kind of how they're going to go through with the marriage. She is going to go to shrift. So basically it's confession. And as this is kind of an excuse for Juliet to get out of the house. And when she comes to confession to see Friar Lawrence, that is where they will get married. So then Romeo is also kind of trying to pay the nurse for her time for doing this errand for her. So she says, "No, truly, sir, not a penny. Go to, I say you shall. This afternoon, sir? What shall she be there? And stay, good nurse, behind the abbey wall, and with this hour my man shall be there with thee, and bring 3 cords made like a tackle stair, which to the high top gallant of my joy must be the convoy in the secret night." So then he's also saying, can you please put like a little rope bridge to Juliet's bedroom, so I can see her later in the evening as well. So these are kind of some of their plans about their marriage and whatnot. "Farewell, be trusty, and I'll quit thy pains. Farewell, commend me to thy to thy mistress." So he's giving her money for her pains, and will pay her back for all of this hardship that she's going to have to do. And he's saying, like, speak nicely and kindly of me, and give best regard to Juliet. "Now God in heaven bless thee. Hark you, sir." So she is being very polite back to him, and says, "What say thou, my dear nurse? Is your man secret? Did you never hear her say, 2 men keep counsel, putting one a man away?" So now the nurse is kind of giving him a hard time, and is just trying to make sure that the other person that was hearing them will keep all this a secret, because obviously this would be quite controversial. The nurse could get in very much a lot of trouble by doing this, because Lord Capulet didn't necessarily approve of this marriage, right? So then Romeo says, "Warrant these mans as true as steel." So he's saying, don't worry about him. He's true to me, and he's not going to betray. She said, "Well, sir, my mistress is the sweetest lady. Lord, was 'twas a little pretty thing. Oh, there's a nobleman in town, one Paris, that would fain lay knife abroad. But she got good soul, had his leave see a toad, very toad as to see him. I hanger her sometimes, and tell her that Paris is the properer man. But I'll warrant you when I say so, she looks as pale as any cloud in the versal world. Doth not Rosemary and Romeo both begin with a letter?" So the nurse is still kind of seeing him out, wanting to make sure that he understands what he's getting in Juliet. And so she's kind of almost now starting to, again, threaten him, saying, "Hey, there is another man that's interested in her, just to let you know. Paris is, but she thinks he's a toad. So she doesn't think anything compares to her, even though she's saying that she thinks that Romeo maybe not necessarily is the greatest." And then when she says, "Don't not Rosemary and Romeo both begin with a letter," Rosemary is something that they use like between, like I said, between lovers. So she's kind of giving him a hard time still. "A nurse, what of that? Both with an R? Ah, mocker, that's a dog's name. R is for that. No, I know it begins with some other letter. And she has a pretty sentence of you and Rosemary that it would do you good to hear it." So he's saying that, like, for some reason, she's saying Juliet really thinks highly of you. Like, don't mess it up. "Commend me to that lady." And she goes, "A 1,000 times. Peter, anon." Before and apace. And so now they are kind of leaving to tell Juliet what is going on. All right, so this was Act 2, Scene 4. I hope this helped you out a little bit as we kind of see what was going on with Mercutio and Benevio and with Tybalt's threat. And we also kind of got to see some of the plans for Romeo and Juliet to marry. Again, if you want to send me an email or write a private comment on this week's assignment with Scarecrow, please do so. That gives you a point or two, just knowing that I know you are listening to my lovely recordings. All right, guys, I miss you terribly. See you later.